Welcome to Picks and Pondering's video preview of Saturday's Pershing Handicap at Hawthorne. I'm Nicole Newlist, Rogue Clown on Twitter. I'm here with Paul Major, Hey Laserbeam on Twitter. And you can find us both at the Picks and Ponderings blog, as well as at Picks Ponderings on Twitter. The stake schedule at Hawthorne looks a little different this year than it has in previous years. In previous years, and even this past spring, there have been Illinois-bred stakes. They've changed the rules a little bit and made them Illinois preferred. That happened earlier with the Cicero and the Stickney, replacing the Bucks Boy and the Illini Princess, and it happens again here with the Dirt Sprint Stakes, where the Pershing is similar to the Powerless, which is to say it's 6 furlongs on the dirt, but instead of only being open to Illinois-bred horses, they have preference, but horses bred elsewhere who have raced in the area in the last 2 months can also enter and run. They did the same thing with the Boys Stakes, which we'll also preview. What used to be the Lightning Jet is the Blackhawk Handicap with similar Illinois preferred conditions. This year's first running of the Pershing Handicap, it drew a field of 12. Although we will note before presenting our picks that the number 7, Brazen Appeal, do not be surprised if she does not run because she ran an allowance at Hawthorne today. Paul, what are your thoughts?
Well, before we go on, we'd like to wish all of our Picks and Ponderings viewers a happy Thanksgiving and a reminder that today that we film these previews in advance. I mean, Thursday's a holiday, and we're probably going to be stuffing our face full of turkey or watching races from Aqueduct or Churchill or even a certain Illinois bred in the Hollywood Turf Cup. But today is so. But Brazen Appeal's allowance was on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, just to keep that in mind. But for this filly mare dirt, but this is a filly mare dirt spread, 50,000 on the line. It takes the name Pershing for the fact that Pershing is the same as a street just below Hawthorne's backstretch. And if you're from the city of Chicago, it's also 39th Street. Hawthorne sits at 35th. So not the most geographically inspiring name in the book, but well, we got stakes, and we've got 2 stakes that serve as undercard features to the $250,000 Hawthorne Gold Cup later in the day.
And with this stakes, drew a field of 12, and it's a lot of the horses that you know and love from the older horse and even the 3-year-old horse races this year. As is normal for these older horse stakes around Illinois, Scott Becker is emptying the barn. 12 horses entered, 4 of them are trained by Scott Becker. That said, I'm not going to his barn for my top pick. In fact, I'm going to Percy Sherbensky and the number 2, Dolly Peach. Dolly Peach has been in fantastic form this summer leading into the fall. She somehow was let off as the longest shot on the board in an allowance at Arlington, won it, and came back and won a very nice allowance here at Hawthorne over the dirt. One thing I really like about Dolly Peach, in addition to her consistency, her good current form, and her liking of the Hawthorne track, is her running style. She's sort of a rally from mid-pack type, and with plenty of speed in this race. I mean, Doc Galore is going to send. Supersede is going to send. Geeker is going to send. Puntsville is probably going to be pretty close to them. Same with Wildwood Cantharos. Who knows about Longshot Heather's Rose? There are enough horses in this field, and particularly those 3, Doc Galore, Supersede, and Keeker, who I see so likely as run it and gun it, that Dolly Peach is going to get some pace to close into. She keeps Carlos Montalvo aboard, who has been aboard for those sharp recent runs and has been sharp for Sherbensky generally. Dolly Peach looks to be working well into this race, looks to be running well at this point in her career, and looks to get the perfect setup. There's everything to love about Dolly Peach here.
I like Dolly Peach in here, but I've always thought of Dolly Peach more as just a deep closer as opposed to a mid-pack type. Someone that's got to get some pace, someone that's got to get pace up front and got to get a good trip. I agree to a point. I just can't slot her on top. She's definitely in the mix. In fact, she's my third choice. But you mentioned before that this is the Scott Becker show, and he has 4 in the field. One of them he has is Doc Galore, and we kind of know what Doc Galore is going to do: go from the gate and gun it with not a lot of passing gear. I'm going to take the Becker that has a passing gear, and that's the number 11 Wildwood Cantharo, 7-2 on the morning line. Even though Scott Becker is putting 4 in here, he's using his most frequent rider, and that's Chris Amy. And the two obviously click very well on this local circuit, be it Hawthorne or Arlington. Currently in the last 2 months, which pretty much sums up the entire Hawthorne meet to this point, 29% wins and a nearly 50% in the money percentage. The ROI leaves a little to be desired. It's about a minus 20. It's about minus 25 cents on the dollar, but that's also due to the fact that these are connections that get creamed at the windows. In a full field of 12, I think Wildwood Cantharos will take some money, but not enough to drive the price down to where it's even money, 4 to 5, 6 to 5, those kinds of scenarios. Secondly, is that she showed a rating gear last time in a twice other than at Hawthorne, where she pulled back off of a moderate pace, I'd say 46 and a 46 half, a 46 and change half, a 56 and change 5/8 is not quick, isn't ridiculously quick for Hawthorne, and she pulled back off of that. That shows that she doesn't need to be in that first flight where Doc Galore is going to be. And I don't think Scott Becker is going to send 2 from his own barn out on a suicide mission. That's just dumb. D-U-M, dumb. I know it has a B on the end, but it's so dumb.
M-R-T.
Yeah, it's so dumb it has 3 letters. So I'm taking a forward runner breaking from a good outside post with ability to rate. But keep in mind, if all the speed chickens out on this, if all the speed chickens out and it becomes a strangle fest, Chris Amy will gladly take this race and lead them all the way around, which is exactly what happened in the Purple Violet going a 1-turn mile across town at Arlington. I know it's not the most creative of prices, 7-2 on the morning line, but I think Wildwood Cantharos, who also is a 3-year-old taking on the elders, has things to like.
I like your thought with a forwardly placed horse who has a passing gear. And my second slotted horse is a forwardly placed horse. In fact, a 3-year-old forwardly placed horse with a passing gear. That said, it's not the 11 Wildwood Cantharos, but rather the number 9, Puntsville. Puntsville was winning allowances was second in a $50,000 claimer off a long lay. She was 4th in the Lassie last year, dropped off the face of the earth, came back in a 50,000 N2L, finished second, notched up to allowance company second off the lay, cleared open N1X, cleared N2X, boom, boom. Then tried stakes company twice, but the thing is, both of those stakes tries that she's made were turf miles. Trying to see if she was going to be a turf miler. No, Puntsville is not a turf miler. She's done her best work going 6 furlongs. She ran short 2 6 furlongs. She won some 5 furlong dashes. Then she stretched out to 6 at Hawthorne, 2 starts back for a state bred allowance, and won emphatically. Turned back up in another state bred allowance on the dirt, 6 furlongs at Hawthorne, and won emphatically again. And what was really nice about that last out win is so many of her others had her right on the lead, either getting it or ding, 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 ding. Whereas last out, she sat off, Victor Santiago pushed the button, and she was gone. Coming in off of that with enough other speed likely to be here, she also has a relatively outside post. She drew the 9. She should be able to get that same kind of trip here. And unlike those turf miles earlier, this seems to be the right sort of distance to get her up into stakes company. Like I said, she's 3, but she's beaten older. All of her allowance wins have come in 3 and up company, not straight 3-year-olds. Finally, her connections are absolutely on fire. Trainer Michelle Boyce has been winning at slightly over a quarter of the time this meet. And with rider Victor Santiago aboard, 3 of their last 9 wins, 7 of their last 9 on the board, and a positive ROI. So I'm buying what you're selling about liking a horse here who's forward yet rateable, but I think Puntsville's the one for me.
No qualms for me on Puntsville because I'm slotting her second as well. One thing I'm going to mention with those last 2 is that those were state bred allowances, those last 2 on the Hawthorne and dirt, and I think those races were beneath her because of the fact that in that 2 back she was hammered down to 2-5 in a state bred, 1 other than allowance, and then last now was hammered down to 3-5 when she cleared the open conditions. I know that people liked. I think this is just a simple case of, well, you got the state bred condition, and she got her butt kicked in these turf miles like the Melanie Francis and 200,000 stakes in Indiana. Let's get some confidence back. And that's exactly what Michelle Boyce did with Puntsville. The confidence came back. They found out what kind of horse they have, and it's a sprinter. She fits in here. She's probably at or the same strength as Wild. To me, it was difficult to go between Wildwood Cantharos and Puntsville, but for all the reasons you like, and with Victor Santiago still in the bike for this one, she makes sense here at her 6-1 quote.
And going back to those allowances for a moment, I think another thing in addition to the confidence builder after those turf tries is she had not raced on dirt yet until that first state bred allowance victory. They hammered her down odds on, but the question was still, could she run on the dirt? She hadn't tried it before. She's proven in her last 2 starts that she takes the dirt here at Hawthorne just fine. Now moving on from that, my third, I had a pretty easy time slotting Dolly Peach on top. I had a pretty easy time slotting Puntsville second. My third, I wasn't quite sure where to go. I knew who to go to, just didn't know where. Of course, who was Scott Becker. And we mentioned Duck Galore before. We know what we're going to get from her. She's going to send. She's probably going to get some other stuff, funny business with her on the front. I don't love Duck Galore here. I considered Wildwood Cantharos as well, and I think that if you're playing a multi through this, that you got to at least cover her defensively. I'll have plenty of money to do that since Commissioner looks like a single in the Gold Cup. That said, as far as particularly one who could be interesting for exotics or get there at a little bit more of a price, particularly since I see there being a lot of speed in this race, I'm going with a closer, and that's the number 12, Rosie My Rosie. Rosie My Rosie does not get Amy. Chris Amy, Becker's A rider, rides Wildwood Cantharos. That said, Santos Sanjor is Becker's consistent B jockey. If he's got 2, it's usually Sanjor and the other one, and he wins his share of races on those Becker B longer priced horses. Rosie My Rosie loves the Hawthorne track. She's won 5 out of 8 with 7 of 8 in the money over it. And even though she's coming in off a pretty long layoff, Becker wins at 23% with those 3-month or longer layoff types, and Rosie My Rosie has turned in some pretty good efforts off of some pretty long lays. The biggest worry with Rosie My Rosie is that she has done most of her work going long, and this is a 6-furlong sprint. Yeah, I think there's a certain element of, well, they don't have a route stakes for her this meet, and she needs a race that's something in her level, and she's probably exhausted every condition known to man because she's been knocking around so long and doing so well for so long. That said, since it looks like Rosie My Rosie is going to get a plum setup and beat Becker with one of Becker's consistent jockeys at a far longer price than Wildwood Kentharos, and with far more trustworthy form than the other Becker, Our Domain, I've got Rosie My Rosie, the 12 slotted third.
Nicole espoused before about Dolly Peach as her win selection, and I'll circle back to her as my third place selection, as a runner that's been nibbling around in the State Bred Stakes level for a while. She was second in the Murphy this year to Royal. She was second in the Murphy to Royal Posh. She was third in last year's Powerless, and she also was third in this. She was also third in this year's Third Chance behind Win 'em All and a fellow entrant in this race, Doc Allure. She's also a past State Bred Stakes winner, winning a Pretty Jenny Stakes back in the day at balloon odds. Dolly Peach has been hanging around this level for a while. Always fires, always brings her late run. The issue is if there's enough pace and enough of a clean trip. Nicole thinks there's going to be enough pace and enough clean trip, and for those of you who think that, I won't talk you off of it. I'm more thinking that Dolly Peach is a more pace dependent and trip dependent than her, but I'm not dissuading her in any way. I do think she makes sense in here at her 9-2 morning line with her mostly regular rider Carlos Montalvo taking the call.
Moving on from the more logical, the, shall we say, familiar Illinois bred stakes type horses or top shelf allowance type horses into the realm of the long shots. As for my long shot to watch, I'm looking at the number 10, and that's Congrats Honey. Congrats Honey is one of 2 horses that trainer Robert Dobbs has in here, and the Dobbs B looks to be an even longer shot than the Dobbs A, the rail-drawn Heather's Rose. That said, Julio Felix, who has had a pretty solid meet and been Dobbs's go-to jock, does have the call on Congrats Honey and not Heather's Rose. I like the fact that Congrats Honey can rally from off the pace, because I do see this as a pretty hopping affair on the front end. I also like the fact that even though she's only run once over the Hawthorne Strip, that was a win 2 back, going 6 furlongs against Open N1X. She shipped out to Indiana Grand for her last start and was 5th, beaten several lengths, but that 5.5 furlongs was probably a little too short for her. Now she stretches back to 6 furlongs, a distance at which she has 5 wins and 4 more in the money finishes in 13 starts. She looks to get quite a bit of pace to rally into, and with the Becker foursome, with Dolly Peach, with Puntsville, with even Keeker and Kinnett, who've won their share of races locally recently, Congrats Honey looks to be pretty likely to be slept on in the wagering and should at least be a bomb for your exotics.
For my long shot to watch, and keep in mind that sometimes these Illinois bred stakes races blow up in extremes. Sometimes it seems you get 4-5 and 6-5 chalk winners, And then you get $30 and $40 horses, or even bigger than that sometimes, especially in races where you have, say, three or four from the, especially in just 3 or 4 from the same horse, or the pace scenario goes wacky. To me, I'm going to be disregarding a certain trainer, and that's Steve Manley, who is ice cold. Ice cold after the recent snow at Hawthorne. Ice cold. As in, he's 3 for 55 on the meat. That's cold. But you know that snow we had a little bit ago? It's thawing. It's melting. Steve Manley was hot all through the summer at Arlington, and perhaps this is a case of what goes up must go down with stables. But Manley's making a jockey upgrade here, away from Constantino Roman and David Mello, who've ridden the horse last time, to one Tim Thornton. The same Tim Thornton who normally floats around in the top of the jockey standings and has won past titles at Hawthorne. The Thornton Manley team don't get together that often, but they do here on the number 5 Connect, 12-1 on the morning line. I'm a little concerned. I might be concerned over the fact that this one has run her better races when she's been closer to the pace. But keep in mind, when she was closer to the pace, that was when there was a more tepid pace on the front end. Looking at the last start at Hawthorne, even though she was on the lead and vied for the pace and a twice other than allowance, they weren't going all that quick on the front end. They were going 22 and change at 46. 3 back when she was close to the lead, also in a twice other than allowance at Hawthorne. What were the early fractions there? 22 and change, 46 and change. But sandwiched in the middle is a start with a 45 half and a sub 22 quarter, and she pulled back. Doc Galore is the kind of horse that could set 22 and 45 fractions in Hawthorne, which leads me to think that Canet is more one-geared than, say, is more one-geared and not completely speed-dependent like a Doc Galore, or completely closer-dependent like, say, a Dolly Peach or others. Maybe Canet can work out a good mid-pack trip in this spot. I know that Canet hasn't won since the summertime in an open first level allowance at Arlington, going 5 panels on yielding ground. But Canet does have 7 starts at Hawthorne. 5 times she's gotten on the podium, and she's got a win picture too. And the fact that Steve Manley this meet has been frigid, I think, is going to keep the price up. 12-1 on my long shot Canet from post 5.
Just to look back at all of our selections in Saturday's Pershing Handicap at Hawthorne. On top, I've got the number 2, Dolly Peach. Slotted second, I've got the number 9, Puntsville. And third, the outside number 12, Rosie My Rosie. For the long shot, I'm going to go for the big bomb with the number 10, Congrats Honey.
And for me, in the Pershing Handicap, the 6th race on Saturday's Hawthorne Gold Cup program, my top choice, the number 11, Wadwood Cantharos. The Scott Becker Williams Steerts connections you can trust with their A rider. Slotted over number 9, Puntsville. Wadwood Cantharos at 7-2 on the morning line. Puntsville at 6-1 on the morning line. My third choice is Nicole's top choice, the number 2, Dolly Peach at 9-2. And I'm thinking a jockey upgrade is the ticket on number 5, Canet, the long shot to watch. 11-9-2 over 5 for me in the Pershing on Saturday at Hawthorne.
As always, thank you very much for watching our Picks and Ponderings video previews. Good luck and happy Thanksgiving weekend.